Struggling waiter fired for serving Ronaldo. Then Ronaldo changes his life. How will this story escalate? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The sun bathed the outdoor terrace of the luxurious seaside restaurant in a golden glow. The waves crashed gently in the distance, a melody that blended with the quiet chatter of the wealthy patrons enjoying their extravagant meals. Crystal glasses clinked, forks tapped against porcelain plates, and the waitstaff moved gracefully between tables, ensuring that every guest was treated with impeccable service. But for Miguel, the young waiter rushing from table to table, this was just another day of struggling to keep up with the relentless pace of the elite dining world. Miguel had been working at Le Prestige for nearly a year, but no matter how hard he tried, he always felt like he was one step away from disaster. The manager, Mr. Velasquez, ran the restaurant with an iron fist. He had no patience for mistakes, and his temper was legendary. Miguel had already been on the receiving end of his wrath more times than he could count, but he endured it because he had no other choice. His mother's medical bills were mounting, his younger brother needed school supplies, and there weren't many jobs available for someone like him. Tonight was an especially important night. The restaurant was hosting some of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the city. Everything had to be perfect. The kitchen staff worked in a frenzy, the waiters were moving at double speed, and the tension was so thick that Miguel could practically taste it. Then, the moment everyone had been preparing for arrived. Cristiano Ronaldo walked in. The world-famous footballer, dressed casually yet exuding an effortless aura of confidence, made his way to a private table near the terrace. His presence alone sent a ripple through the restaurant. Guests whispered, some trying to steal glances without being too obvious. Even the staff was starstruck, but they knew better than to show it. Miguel's heart pounded. He had admired Ronaldo for years, not just for his skills on the field, but for his resilience and discipline. And now, by some twist of fate, he had been assigned to serve his table. Taking a deep breath, Miguel steadied his nerves and approached with practiced professionalism. "Good evening, sir," he said, offering a polite nod. "Welcome to Le Prestige. It's an honor to serve you tonight." Ronaldo looked up and smiled, a small but genuine gesture. "Thank you," he said simply. Miguel took their drink orders, ensuring that everything was perfect. He moved with careful precision, making sure Ronaldo and his guests were comfortable. As he set down their appetizers, his hands trembled slightly. He silently cursed himself. This was no time for nerves. Ronaldo noticed. "You all right?" he asked casually. Miguel froze for a second, caught off guard. Most guests barely acknowledged waiters unless they had a complaint. But here was Ronaldo actually looking at him with concern. "Yes, sir," Miguel replied quickly. "Just a busy night." Ronaldo gave a small nod but didn't press further. The evening went on smoothly. Miguel ensured that every plate was delivered flawlessly. Every request was met with immediate attention. It felt like, for once, he was doing everything right. And then disaster struck. Miguel was carrying a tray with an expensive bottle of wine, carefully making his way through the maze of tables. Just as he reached Ronaldo's table, another waiter, moving too quickly, accidentally bumped into him. Time seemed to slow. The bottle slipped from Miguel's grasp. A horrifying crash echoed across the terrace as the wine shattered onto the floor, dark red liquid splashing onto the pristine white tablecloth, right in front of Ronaldo. The restaurant fell silent. Miguel felt his entire world collapse. His breath hitched, and a wave of panic surged through him. Every eye was on him. He knew what was coming. Mr. Velasquez stormed out of the kitchen, his face red with fury. "Miguel," he bellowed, his voice slicing through the tense atmosphere. "What have you done?" Miguel scrambled to clean up the mess, his hands shaking. "I'm so sorry, sir. It was an accident." "An accident?" Velasquez hissed, his eyes filled with rage. "Do you have any idea who you just embarrassed?" He turned to Ronaldo, his expression shifting into forced politeness. "Mr. Ronaldo, I deeply apologize for this incompetence." Ronaldo, however, didn't look upset. If anything, he looked mildly amused. "It's just wine," he said calmly. But Velasquez wasn't listening. His fury was directed solely at Miguel. "This is the last time, Miguel. I've had enough of your incompetence. You're done here. Get out." Miguel's breath caught. "Please, sir. I don't want to hear it." Velasquez snapped. "You're fired." The words hit Miguel like a punch to the gut. Fired. Just like that. Everything he had been working for, gone in an instant. Humiliation burned through him as the other staff members looked away, unwilling to meet his gaze. Some guests whispered among themselves, others watching the scene unfold with mild interest. He clenched his fists, trying to hold back the sting of tears. And then a voice cut through the tension. "That's not necessary." The entire restaurant turned toward the speaker. "Ronaldo." Velasquez straightened, clearly taken aback. "Sir, with all due respect." "No," Ronaldo interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "You're firing him over an accident. That's excessive." Velasquez forced a tight smile. "Mr. Ronaldo, I appreciate your concern, but this is a professional establishment. We hold our staff to the highest standards." Ronaldo leaned forward slightly. "And yet, you seem to have no problem mistreating them." Murmurs spread across the terrace. Some guests nodded in quiet agreement. Velasquez's jaw tightened. "This is not your concern." Ronaldo raised an eyebrow. "You fired him in front of the entire restaurant over something that wasn't even his fault. I'd say that makes it everyone's concern." Velasquez looked flustered but tried to maintain control. "With all due respect, sir, this is a private matter." Ronaldo crossed his arms. "Then let me make it simple. If this is how you treat your employees, I won't be dining here again." A ripple of shock went through the crowd. Losing a client like Ronaldo was bad enough, but losing the public image associated with him, that was a nightmare. Velasquez swallowed hard, his face pale. "Sir, Before he could finish, Ronaldo reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and placed a thick stack of cash on the table. "I was going to tip him anyway," Ronaldo said. "But now, consider this compensation for the job you just took from him." Gasps filled the air. Miguel's eyes widened. He had never seen so much money in one place before. His hands trembled as he stared at it, unable to comprehend what was happening. Velasquez looked like he was going to explode. But he couldn't argue with Ronaldo. Not here, not now. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "Fine," he spat. "Miguel is no longer employed here. If you wish to support him, that is your business." Ronaldo turned to Miguel. "Come with me." Miguel hesitated. "What?" "You don't need to stay in a place that doesn't respect you," Ronaldo said simply. Miguel's heart pounded. He had just lost everything, but had he? Slowly, he nodded, stepping away from the table. Ronaldo stood, clapped him on the back, and said, "Let's talk." And just like that, Miguel walked out of the restaurant, not as a man who had just been fired, but as someone who had just been given an opportunity he never expected. Miguel stepped out of the restaurant with Ronaldo, his heart pounding. The cool evening air did little to calm his nerves. Everything had happened so fast. One moment, he was a struggling waiter just trying to make it through another shift. The next, he was standing beside one of the most famous athletes in the world, completely unsure of what was about to happen. They walked a few steps away from the restaurant entrance, where Ronaldo pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Miguel stood awkwardly, shifting from foot to foot, still processing the fact that he had just lost his job. The weight of his reality came crashing down on him again. No paycheck. No way to help his mother with her medical bills. No way to support his younger brother. What was he supposed to do now? After a moment, Ronaldo ended his call and turned back to him. "You got anywhere to be?" he asked casually. Miguel let out a dry laugh. "Not anymore." Ronaldo smirked. "Yeah, I figured." He leaned against the railing overlooking the quiet street, watching the distant city lights. "How long have you been working in restaurants?" Miguel sighed. "A long time. My dad left when I was a kid, so I had to start working early to help my mom. Then she got sick, and my little brother still needs school supplies. I never really had the luxury of choosing what I wanted to do. I just worked wherever I could." Ronaldo nodded as if he understood. "And if you could choose, if money wasn't a problem, what would you want to do?" Miguel frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ronaldo said, tilting his head slightly, "if you could wake up tomorrow and do something you actually love, what would it be?" Miguel hesitated. No one had ever asked him that before. His whole life had been about survival, about making sure there was food on the table. Dreaming? That had never been an option. But if he was being honest with himself, there was one thing. I've always loved cooking, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. My mom used to teach me recipes when I was a kid. It was the one thing that made me happy. Ronaldo's eyes lit up. Then why aren't you doing that? Miguel let out a humorless laugh. Because life doesn't work like that. I don't have the training. I don't have the experience. People don't just wake up one day and become chefs. Ronaldo grinned. People don't just wake up one day and become professional footballers either. They work for it. Miguel paused, realizing Ronaldo had a point. But before he could respond, a sleek black car pulled up in front of them. The driver stepped out and opened the door. "Get in," Ronaldo said. Miguel blinked. "Where are we going?" "To get you a real opportunity." Miguel's heart pounded. Was this actually happening? He wanted to ask a million questions, but instead, he took a deep breath and slid into the car. The ride was mostly silent at first. Miguel kept glancing at Ronaldo, still trying to comprehend how his life had taken this turn. Finally, he worked up the courage to ask, "Why are you doing this?" Ronaldo shrugged. "Because I've been where you are. I know what it's like to be underestimated. To have people treat you like you don't matter." He smirked slightly. "And because I like proving people wrong." Miguel didn't know what to say. He had spent his entire life struggling, and now, out of nowhere, someone was offering him a chance. And not just anyone, Cristiano Ronaldo. The car eventually pulled up in front of a building Miguel didn't recognize. It wasn't a restaurant, at least not the kind he was used to. The sign above the entrance read Casa de Oro, House of Gold. Ronaldo stepped out first, and Miguel hesitated before following. Inside, the air was thick with the rich aroma of spices and sizzling meat. The place had an energy to it, a warmth that was different from the cold, rigid environment of Le Prestige. The chefs moved with precision, but there was no yelling, no fear, just passion. A middle-aged man in a chef's coat approached them, wiping his hands on a towel. His sharp eyes immediately locked onto Miguel. "Neymar, my friend," the man greeted, clapping Ronaldo on the back. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight." Ronaldo chuckled. "Needed a favor." The chef raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Ronaldo motioned toward Miguel. "This is Miguel. He's looking for a fresh start." Miguel felt his throat tighten. "Sir, the chef held up a hand. "You worked in restaurants before?" Miguel nodded. "Yes, but mostly as a waiter." The chef studied him for a long moment. "Ever work in the kitchen?" Miguel hesitated. "Not professionally, but I know my way around food." The chef turned back to Ronaldo. "You sure about this?" Ronaldo smirked. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." The chef let out a breath, then nodded. "All right, you start tomorrow, 5 a.m. Miguel's eyes widened. "Wait, just like that?" The chef shrugged. "You were vouched for by Ronaldo." "That's enough for me." Miguel couldn't believe it. He had walked into this restaurant expecting nothing, and now he had a job. A real opportunity. Ronaldo clapped him on the shoulder. "Now you just have to prove yourself." Miguel's heart pounded as he extended his hand. "I won't let you down." The chef shook it. "We'll see." That night, Miguel barely slept. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on him, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't fear, it was excitement. When he arrived at Casa de Oro the next morning, he was greeted by the smell of fresh bread and the sight of chefs already prepping ingredients for the day. He was handed an apron and immediately thrown into work. The pace was relentless, but Miguel loved it. He chopped vegetables, helped prep sauces, and shadowed the more experienced chefs. Every time he made a mistake, instead of being yelled at, he was corrected. It was a completely different world from what he had known before. As the weeks passed, Miguel improved. His knife skills became sharper, his timing better. He started assisting on the line, plating dishes, learning techniques he had only ever seen on television. Then, one evening, something happened that changed everything. Miguel had just finished plating a dish when the chef walked up behind him, arms crossed. "Not bad," he said. Miguel exhaled in relief. The chef smirked. "You ready to run the line for a night?" Miguel's heart nearly stopped. "Me?" The chef nodded. "You've been working hard. Time to see if you can handle the pressure." Miguel couldn't believe it. He had started as an inexperienced kitchen assistant, and now he was being trusted with leading a station for the night. He nodded. "I'm ready." That night, he cooked like his life depended on it. Orders flew in, and Miguel handled them with precision. Every plate had to be perfect. Every dish had to be flawless. And when the final orders went out, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The staff clapped him on the back, and the chef gave him an approving nod. Good work. As Miguel untied his apron, exhausted but exhilarated, his phone buzzed. A message from Ronaldo. "Heard you ran the line tonight. Knew you had it in you. Keep pushing." Miguel stared at the screen, emotion welling in his chest. He had been fired. Now he was thriving. All because Ronaldo had given him a chance. Miguel barely had time to process everything that had happened over the past few weeks. The transformation from a struggling waiter to an up-and-coming chef felt surreal. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise, pushing himself harder, determined to prove that he belonged in this kitchen. And every night, as he walked home exhausted but fulfilled, he knew he was doing something he had never been able to do before, building a future. But the real test was yet to come. One afternoon, as Miguel prepped ingredients for the dinner rush, the head chef walked up to him with a serious expression. "You have plans tomorrow?" he asked. Miguel frowned. "Oh, no." "Why?" The chef smirked. "Because tomorrow you're catering a private event." Miguel's knife slipped from his fingers. "Wait, what?" "Private event," the chef repeated, amused by Miguel's reaction. "You'll be leading the team preparing the food." Miguel's stomach tightened. "But I've never done anything like that before." "Good," the chef said. "Then it's time to learn." Miguel barely slept that night. He stayed up watching cooking tutorials, reading about menu planning, and memorizing techniques he had learned over the past weeks. He couldn't afford to fail. The next day, he arrived at the event early, making sure everything was in place. The venue was a stunning mansion, the kind Miguel had only ever seen in magazines. The staff bustled around him, setting up tables, arranging decorations, and preparing for what was clearly a high-profile gathering. Miguel took a deep breath, running through the menu one last time. He had to get this right. As guests began arriving, Miguel and his team worked like a well-oiled machine. Dishes were plated with precision, ingredients balanced perfectly. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Everything was going smoothly. Then the final course was served. Miguel was just about to step back and let the evening finish when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "I knew you could do it." He turned sharply. Ronaldo. Dressed in a sleek black suit, he grinned at Miguel, clearly impressed. Miguel could barely form words. You set this up?" Ronaldo shrugged. "I told you I believed in you." Miguel looked around, realization dawning on him. This wasn't just any event. This was Ronaldo's event. "You did this for me?" Miguel asked, still in disbelief. "I did this because you earned it," Ronaldo corrected. "I just gave you the opportunity." Miguel swallowed hard, overwhelmed by emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." Ronaldo smirked. "Then don't. Just keep proving me right." At that moment, Miguel realized something. He wasn't just some waiter who got lucky. He was a chef, and his journey was only just beginning. As the event wound down, Miguel stood at the edge of the room, watching as the last of the guests enjoyed their meals. The atmosphere was warm, filled with laughter, satisfied murmurs, and the occasional clinking of glasses. It was the kind of evening he had only dreamed of being a part of, not as a waiter, not as a background figure, but as the creator of something special. Ronaldo walked up to him, a glass of sparkling water in hand. "You did well tonight," he said, his voice full of approval. Miguel let out a shaky breath. "I still can't believe this happened." Ronaldo chuckled. "Believe it. You've earned it." Miguel nodded, still feeling the weight of everything that had changed in his life. Just a few weeks ago, he'd been nothing more than a struggling waiter, terrified of losing his job. Now he was standing in the middle of a high-profile event, having led the kitchen team, serving dishes that people had genuinely loved. And all because one man had seen something in him. As if reading his thoughts, Ronaldo placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is just the beginning," he said. "But I need to ask you something." Miguel turned to him, curious. "What is it?" Ronaldo's expression was serious but kind. "What's next?" Miguel blinked. "Next? Yes, Ronaldo said. You've proven you have the talent. You've proven you have the work ethic. But where do you go from here? Miguel hesitated. The truth was, he hadn't thought that far ahead. He had been so focused on surviving each day, on proving himself in the kitchen, that he hadn't allowed himself to imagine anything beyond this moment. I don't know, he admitted honestly. Ronaldo nodded as if he had expected that answer. Then figure it out. Because I have a proposal. Miguel's heart pounded. A proposal? Ronaldo smirked. I want to invest in a restaurant. A place that isn't just about fine dining, but about giving people opportunities. Like the one you got. Miguel's eyes widened. You mean? I want you to run it, Ronaldo said simply. Miguel felt the air rush from his lungs. Was this real? Was this actually happening? You want me to run a restaurant? He asked, still unable to process it. Ronaldo laughed. Not alone, of course. You'll have help. But I've seen what you can do. And I think you're ready for more. Miguel stared at him, emotions swirling inside him. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a future. A real future. One where he wasn't just working for someone else. He was building something of his own. Tears pricked at his eyes, but he blinked them away, straightening his shoulders. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Ronaldo said with a grin. Now, let's get to work. Miguel nodded, determination settling in his chest. This was it. His second chance. His new beginning. And he was ready. Because sometimes, all it took was one act of kindness to change a life forever. And Ronaldo had just changed his.